presenter today is Thomas Sample, CEO of Karma Creative. You all probably know him. He's been a very active member of the community and a huge supporter of Solidus. Thomas, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Sean. And hello and welcome to everybody here at SolidusConf. I could not be more excited to be here with you today. And even though we're not in person, it inspires me to such a huge extent to see so many people attending this virtual conference. In the past, last year, I think we had maybe 50 people. We have over 70 people attending online, and it's truly fantastic. It makes me want to work on Solidus more when I see the community pitching in this much. So in the past, we've talked about first, just kind of a background on SEO in my talk from 2018, and then in 2019, tip-based SEO. And now today, we're going to focus on actually a workshop. It's a great opportunity for you to all work on your own websites and follow through this audit. You can use my examples, but I would encourage you to use your own. Use this as a time to do an SEO audit if you never got a chance from past years, or maybe you got a chance to do a few of those things, but not everything. Let's dive in. So this is just a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. The different types of audits that we'll be doing. First is indexation and SERP analysis, specifically with Search Console, which is an amazing tool, one of my highest recommendations. Then we'll move into SEO spider crawl audits. So that'd be Screaming Frog and the Ahref trial plan, which we'll maybe do before that Screaming Frog. So we have time for it to finish before the end of this call, hopefully. Next, we'll move into technical on-page SEO audits, such as Google PageSpeed Insights, Google Test My Site, Webpagetest.org, and structured data, and now the new rich results tool, which is pretty exciting, came out of beta just recently. Then we'll move into keyword and content audits, specifically keyword and competitive analysis, although we'll just be doing it at a high level with more manual work as homework. And then duplicate content, both in-site and out-of-site. And finally, a manual EAT audit for that expertise, authoritativeness, and trust that we care so much about. Finally, as a bonus, we'll add in an accessibility audit, touch on Solidus SEO, and of course, one of my favorite topics, support Solidus. Before we do all of that, first, I need to say thank you. Thank you to the core team, to Alberto and Gregor and Thomas, Andrea, Alessandro, and Jared. You guys really take the cake. You've committed to hard work and leadership this year. We've come such a long way as a platform, just like Alberto was talking about in his talk. And thank you to all of our community as well. It's not just the amazing developers on the core team, but the amazing Solidus developers right here on these calls with us now. And of course, thank you to our ambassadors and our partners and our supporters and our sponsors. We're stronger than ever together. And I can't resist not going through a few of the things. I know Alberto touched on this, but we got a brand new Solidus.io website and new industry pages on Solidus.io with case studies. That's something to be excited about. New PayPal extension, and thank you for your sponsorship. The new Affirm extension, the Easy Post extension. These are all new work that came out of either Nebulab, the core members, or the open source community funding our new open source maintainer, Peter, which is just fantastic. And that Solidus book he's got on his way out, like, I want to read a book about how to make a Solidus store. That sounds great. And maybe best of all, we have a roadmap, something that we've been asking for years, since 2018, right? So, and so much more than that. We're in a great position. But before we go into the talk a little bit about me, just some quick updates. Since SolidusConf Salt Lake City last year, my daughter turned 1, and here's a video of us spinning around together. I made some more hot sauce, and of course, I continued growing Karma Creative. And who are we at Karma Creative? You may have seen this before, but we're a new breed of digital agency. We pride ourselves on working with Karma in everything that we do. And that means paying developers fairly for their time, regardless of where they live. It means helping clients succeed in whatever their endeavors are, not just making them a website and walking away, but really trying to bring them the success that they're looking for. It means giving back to the open source community, joining the Solidus stakeholder meetings every week and running that Zoom meeting. I'm able to talk to friends that before last year, we talked to maybe once a year, and really build the trust that's essential for what Alberto was talking about moving forward, of more of us stepping up and taking a leadership role to manage our open source project. And finally, karma means long-term client relationships. We don't like to work just on limited engagements. We prefer to work on retainer services where we charge a flat fee per month. And that seems to align us so that we can provide the holistic digital services that bring that success we were talking about earlier. And this is services spanning the full gamut from soup to nuts. We can design it and build it and market it and all of that, and we'll be your partner all alongside. First, before we get into today's talk, let's talk about what happened in 2018. Why did I first give a talk on SEO at a Solidus conference? Making our case. Why this talk? Why SEO now? Well, one does not simply get to page 1 on Google. I mean, an awesome website isn't enough. Long-term relationships are important for mutual success. And that means long-term relationships between client and agency and Google and other partners, Bing, Facebook. It means working together over the long term to build these relationships, not thinking of SEO as a tiny afterthought, but addressing it early on. I mean, after all, the problem is SEO isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And you need to start running right now, not after you finish your app and it's all shiny and new. But what's the good news? You don't need to be an SEO expert. You just have to do the work. How? Well, we've been explaining that a little bit over the past talks the last 2 years. First in 2018 with kind of an SEO overview, you could think about it as. And then with SEO tips last year, 101 that turned into 114 or something like that. I strongly encourage everybody on this call, if you're interested in this, to really get in there and watch those talks and get more context about the benefits for why we're doing what we're doing on this call at your leisure. But today we're going to focus mostly on how to do it and not why we're doing it. But I would be remiss if I didn't a little bit touch on that overview. So here's the table of contents for 2018. These are the general anatomy of SEO. First, we talked about keyword research and planning, and that's deciding which keywords we're going to target, making a big list, deciding which are the best quality keywords, and then making our website optimized around those keywords. Then we moved into technical SEO, and we talked about site-wide optimizations, and metadata, and structured data, and of course, optimizing for speed. Another critical component is original content. So we talked about content marketing and SEO content guidelines, and we built upon that last year as well. And finally, offsite promotion, which is critical to organic SEO. Link acquisition, AKA building backlinks, is going to be maybe a third of your ranking signal to Google. So it's very important. We tried to talk about business citations and ranking in local search and some measurement. And if you remember, I even made the case at the end of the talk for a new team member, someone that was solely focused on SEO and copywriting that started right alongside the app from day one. Last year, we built on all the information with something that was missing from 2017 called EAT, or in other words, expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. Expertise means, frankly, are you an expert in your field? Do people consider you an expert? For example, do you have a degree as a lawyer? Are you a member of the Bar Association? Or are you just someone that's saying they're a lawyer? Authoritativeness, on the other hand, means do other authorities within your field recognize you as an authority? So are you referred as one of the best lawyers from the Bar Association Community Council or something to that extent? Do you have other sites linking to you that are authorities in your field? And finally, trust. Can people trust you? Are you able to be found if someone had a problem with you or your website? And do people have social proof that you've been around for a while and that you treat your customers well, and you're a good businessman or woman? Okay, that's the background. We're done with that. This talk's about an audit. It's not even a talk. It's really a workshop. And again, I stress to you, try to follow along on your own, doing this one step at a time, rather than just following along with me one-on-one. But the first thing we'll look at is Search Console. If you have not done this, now is the time, without question. We'll be able to do it right while we're on our call here, and you'll get benefits for years to come. Google will alert you when things are wrong and tell you when things are right, and even make recommendations for making things better. So all we're going to do is we're going to take this URL right here, which I'll also just pop into the chat so that anybody can click if they'd like to, and we'll visit the Search Console. Now, right now, I have pulled up just kind of a test site. Actually, this was, if you look up this URL, this was a brochureware site that we made for a client that isn't using it to promote right now, and it's kind of defunct, but it's still some data in here. And we're going to come back to this because it has real data. This was the best middle ground I could find from not exposing client data and not having no data, because we won't have any data right when we sign up for Search Console. It's going to take about 24 hours for it to populate. But what we'll do is we'll click on this arrow up here and scroll down to Add Property and click Add Property. And then you're going to want to type in the name of your domain that you're adding. So in our case, we're going to type in this new domain that I made for this workshop, which is SolidusArock.com. Pun intended. Okay, so here we have this verification pop-up coming up. If you've never used Search Console before, it may not default you to this any DNS provider choice. I think this is the easiest one. I also use DNS Simple, which I find to be extremely good at adding DNS records quickly and easily. It might change if you're on GoDaddy or something like that. But for now, we're just going to simply copy this Google site verification code. I'm going to switch over. I actually have this DNS record already sitting open here for Solidus Arock. And I'll add a record. We need to add a text record. We leave the name blank, so it redirects to just solidusarock.com. We'll set the time to live to 1 minute. One of the things I like about DNS Simple. And by the way, I'm getting no like affiliate or referral commission for any of the services I'm recommending. I just think you should use them because they're awesome. So we'll add that record. And believe it or not, that'll get added in pretty quick. So we can expect this verification to happen almost right away. We'll just give it a moment. I'll let you guys hopefully do that same thing on your own, give you a second. And by the way, as we're going through, if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat. We'll try to get to them during the workshop. If we can't, we'll try to get to them after the workshop during the Q&A. And if we still can't, maybe we can jump on a call later or at some other time. Okay, so that's been about 60 seconds. Oh, not yet. Give it another second. Here's our text tag. And there we go. Ownership verified. So by verifying your ownership, you get access to the domain property in Google Search Console, and you'll be able to see all this different data. Unfortunately, as I said, it takes about 24 hours to start populating, so we're not going to see anything right now. And that's it. You're signed up for Google Search Console. It's really that easy. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to take a look at that other website that I showed you before, just so we have a little data as we move down. We're going to talk about what's in Search Console. What are we actually auditing here? Well, first at the top, you see this overview. That's what we're looking at right now, where we see just some quick reports. But we can drill down into this. For example, the one at the top, performance, I can click here, and I can see what keywords we're ranking for and which ones are getting clicked on. So our top keyword here during this period from the 23rd of June onward is fashion home furniture. Granted, it's only 3 clicks and only 15 impressions, but the average click-through rate ain't bad, right? 14.3%. Not terrible position, but we'd really like that to be under 10, obviously, or even better, top 3, right? But you're able to see a lot of stuff here. How many clicks, how many impressions. I can add the click-through rate to track it over time, or the average position to track it over time. I can change the range that I'm tracking this for and see quite a lot of information about my website. And before we move on to the next one, coverage, which will be the next one kind of as audit, we're going to actually take a little digression into URL inspection. If you haven't used this tool before, you really should. If you see anything in coverage when we get there where there's an error and you need to investigate more, or if you simply publish new content that you want to make sure Google indexes right away, you can use this tool, type in a URL. I just used my pre-filled in value that I used earlier when I was testing, furnituresellfnh.com, and it's going to give me an inspection report on it. Better yet, if I need it to be added to the priority crawl queue, I can just click request indexing, and it'll be typically indexed within only 2 days, which is great. Sometimes it's 2 weeks without clicking this button. Obviously, that depends on how large of site you are, how much domain authority you are, and how often your content changes. such as what's specified in your XML sitemap, the priority of how frequently pages should be crawled. But this is a great way, regardless, to get an urgent message out or inspect something or just get an update into the index. Okay, next is coverage. This is showing us how many pages are indexed in Google that you can actually search for. We can see actually on this site, there's only one valid page. This is by design. We decided that the other versions of this page that show for the individual furniture stores didn't warrant their own page, that just be counted as duplicate content. So we decided to redirect a bunch of them back to that main page. You can see that happening. We click over onto excluded and then into like page with redirect. We'll see it drill down and we can see that these other domains, either from our www on HTTP or www on HTTPS, or without the www, the naked domain, but on HTTP, we're redirecting all of those. So Google isn't indexing them. And likewise, for these furniture store pages, we're not indexing those either. So we're redirecting, Google knows that, it's not gonna include it in our coverage. But really this coverage, though it can be discovered automatically by Google, it's much better if we use a sitemap for it, which is the next section. So you wanna have a sitemap submitted, and this sitemap is going to really specify everything that's going on your website to Google. There's a great extension, Solidus Sitemap, that you can check out that's under the hood using a sitemap generator gem that's very flexible in Rails. And you can basically, similar to a routes file, declare whatever kind of sitemap routes that you want, iterating through your models or anything else that you need, and generate that sitemap and submit it. Google will validate it. And here's the best part, it'll tell you if there's any errors. If there are pages that they found that aren't on your sitemap or that are on your sitemap but aren't indexed, this will allow you to uncover that. The other great way to uncover that is using the site operator, which I know we mentioned on past talks, but I'll just mention it again here. So it's site : and then the name of your website with no space. And Google will take this and return only results from that domain. And so we can see we're returning just one result for this domain from that site operator. And it's like also a quick way to check anytime you're curious. That number should match up with whatever we have listed for valid covered pages under coverage in the Search Console. If it doesn't, again, that's an indication something's wrong. A lot of times Search Console is giving you a hint and then you got to do a little bit of digging. But if you found that you only had 2 pages here, but there's 3 here or 3 here, 2 here and 3 there, there's a discrepancy, you got to look into it a little bit more. The removal section is in case you needed to remove a page urgently. I've never had to use that, but you might. There's some other ones related to mobile statistics and speed. Then there's these sections on enhancements down here related to structured data. Search Console allows us to see a lot of this structured data. Like, for example, you can see that there's warnings on all 28 of the products that are listed on this page because of the reasons listed here. For example, missing field, price valid until. But we're going to go through later how to use a separate new testing tool for structured data called Rich Results Test. That's even a little bit better than what's included by default in Search Console. I shouldn't skip over security and manual actions. Just click into them quickly. If you had any manual actions, it's because you were doing something black hat that Google didn't like. You're building spammy links or spamming keywords or who knows what. Google thinks it's shady and they give you a manual action that like basically delists your site or for all intents and purposes demotes it so much it's delisted. But you can correct them and respond to that under that tab. But if you are registered for Search Console and all of a sudden you get one of these for whatever reason, you'll be notified by email. Same with the security issues. Okay, and now this section, legacy and tools reports, this isn't going to work with our domain property, which is the new setup for Google. If you're still using the old one, you can use these tools and they're pretty good. We're going to skip them for now because they don't work with the domain choice that we picked, which includes all subdomains underneath one naked top level domain, as opposed to perhaps doing www separate from m dot separate from the naked domain, something like that. So now down at the bottom, this is pretty cool. This is the backlinks that Google has found for your site. And we can check for backlinks with other tools, but this is telling us right away, oh, chronofurniture.com, one of the ones we're listing for, that's linking to us a lot. we can click more and see a little bit more detail here. We can see what the top link pages are. I mean, you know, with a larger site with more data, this would be better information that's more valuable, but it's really cool to see it from here. We can, of course, change our settings and you know, submit feedback down there, but that's about it. That's Search Console in a really quick run through. So as not to dwell too long, let's just move on and head into our next type of audit. There's only one real option in that first one, which is the Screaming Frog SEO Spider and the Ahrefs Trial Plan Site Audit, these spider crawls. So the first thing I'm going to recommend is, actually, it's out of order a little bit here, but I'm going to recommend we do the Ahrefs first. And there's an asterisk here. It's not actually a free trial. It's a $7 for 7-day trial. So I know I promised in the title to talk everything be free, not quite free, but I think it's worth it. It's $7. I know a lot of you paid for a free ticket. I say paid for, got a free ticket, which is great. Happy so many people are on this call, but maybe you want to use some of that money you saved and sign up $7 for this trial. Again, I'm getting no referral credit. I'm going to visit this URL. It's going to redirect me just to the Ahrefs dashboard from this test site that I did. But for you, if you visit that, it'll pretty quickly just pop up with a little thing where you enter your credit card, your email address. You'll receive you won't set a password, which is kind of interesting, pretty cool. It'll just automatically create an account. It'll send you an email verification, and then you'll click that. I got it right away, so it should happen pretty quick for you. You click that email verification, and then I'll come back basically into this screen, but really it's more like into this one when I click new project. So I'll do that now. I'll take a little sip of water while I allow you guys to catch up. Anybody's following along and registering right now? That was actually the coffee, not the water. Okay. So hopefully you managed to do that. If you didn't, you're almost there, and I'm trying to talk slowly. We're going to skip the Google Search Console import, which we could do. For the purpose of this demo, it's much better to use them add manually. So on the right here, you just click add manually. We're going to add in this new project. We're only interested right now in the HTTPS, so that's what we're going to set it for. And this new site that we made, solidusarok.com, we'll type right there. And it looks like the domain is accessible. Great news. Let's give it a tiny bit more descriptive name, Solidus Arok, and we will click continue. Okay, so again, just like Search Console, we now get this domain verification. We're familiar with it now, though. Hopefully you're even logged into your DNS provider at this point, like I am, and this one's even easier for you. So I'm going to recommend doing a DNS record again. Just click that. It'll show you the DNS record that you need to add. It's another text record. Copy that text record. Click back to your domain service provider. Add a new record, text record, leaving the target blank or with an @ sign, depending on your registrar. We'll set the time to live to 1 minute again, so it pops up real quick, just like last time. Then we'll click add record. Okay, I think that is about 60 seconds. If it's not, we could pop over and look at something else in the meantime. Let's see if this works. There we go. Beautiful. So our ownership has been verified. Ahrefs now knows we own this domain. We can click continue. Now it's going to ask if we want to schedule site audits. We actually don't care about that right now. I'm just going to run one during the call. You might want to keep that on, though, especially if you intend to keep the trial for more than a week, since it's a weekly schedule generally. So yeah, we're just going to use whatever the default options are here. Don't need to worry about changing that for right now, and click continue. And again, we get to this screen here. If you want, you can enter in like keywords that you might want to track for your domain. So Solidus, and Solidus is great, and I love Solidus, typical stuff. So we click continue, and then we can enter competitors if we want. So maybe we want to enter, I don't know if you guys consider it a competitor. It's freecommerce.org. Tried to navigate to the .com by accident. It was like, oh, is free commerce gone? Nope, it's at .org now. So we'll click finish. And it has now started the crawl. And that's all that we can do for right now, actually. We're just gonna hold back, wait, and come back to it later. And that's why I want to do Ahrefs first, because we really can't analyze any of these results until it's done. I mean, we could take a look at what I have here, but the idea is for you to follow along with me. So now, hopefully you've all queued that up. And we're going to move on to Screaming Frog SEO Spider. This one is cool because it is completely free. Although I will note in the most recent versions, they've locked it down just a little bit more than what we had in the past. I know I didn't post the link to the Ahrefs login there. I don't know if you guys need that link. Probably not. Especially at this point, they were a few minutes past it, but there you go. And the link for the Screaming Frog SEO Spider is also there. Just click over there, click download. Here's when Sean's advice would have come in very handy, and I should have emailed out instructions to everybody on what they should download to prepare for this workshop. Unfortunately, I did not have time to do that. So please, everybody click download. It's not a tiny download, but it's not huge. I think it's about 80 megabytes or something like that. And you'll download this audit tool, and you'll quickly be able to start using it. In the meantime, I'm actually going to switch over to that. I already have it downloaded. Surprise, surprise. And so let me just switch over to that here. And I've already started an audit, but I'm going to run another one right now. So what you're going to want to do is type your URL into the bar up here. I'll just type it in again for demonstration, and because some people may be catching up on the download. But at the top of Screaming Frog, type in https:// the name of your website, in this case, solidusarock.com, and I'm just going to click start. Now, there are more complicated options you can use for this, such as loading in a sitemap XML, but they recently removed that from the free version. So, I mean, I wasn't able to figure out how to do that offhand this morning when I was testing. Maybe there's a way. You definitely used to be able to do it, and there's like an option of which type of input you wanted to use here. But at this point, it looks like it's only allowing you to enter a URL. That's fine for our demo purposes. You're going to get a lot out of this just from what we got. At the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you can see here it's saying 348 of 500. That's because there's a limit on only 500 URLs with the free version. And we can access more apparently from here. And you might, if you know Solidus, be wondering, well, what the heck's going on? What is that site? You've never showed it to me, and maybe now is a good time to just check it out real quick. I just threw this together today. As you can see, it's not even redirecting to the secure URL. So make sure you include the HTTPS if you want the secure version. I threw this together today. This is a clone of the Solidus demo that Sean put together and Nebula put together. If you haven't seen this, by the way, just as a side note, it's really awesome. There's a guided tour of Solidus where you can click through and see all this stuff. It's really great, and it's geared towards even a stakeholder that's very non-technical. There's some technical things in it a little bit, but as you can see, if we navigate through, I don't know if this whole thing will work in my site. Yeah, it does. Great. You may want to check that out. It's really great. But here we have Solidus Rock. And why are we getting over 500 URLs? It's because that demo site makes available all the admin routes. So I implore you, please don't go mess up. I shouldn't even jinx it by saying it. But please don't go mess anything up while I'm still working with this. I guess I'll use this punishment, just going to whatever of your stores and auditing them instead if it breaks. But as you can see, admin's accessible because it's a demo site. And we will go back now. Oh, I've been sharing the wrong screen with you the whole time. So let me actually switch over. Sorry about that. This is the site. Now that you can see my browser. Apologize for that kind of confusion. Here we go. And this is the guided tour I was just mentioning, which you also couldn't see until a moment ago. Guided tour, working nice. Okay, and then this demo site, that's just a fork of that Solidus Store with admin accessible without logging in. Okay, so now switching back to Screaming Frog and looking at some of the results. So in Screaming Frog, it's going to give you a whole ton of information on the right-hand side, and that's what I recommend you start, especially if you're not familiar with the program. There's some summary type stuff. There's a breakdown of what your content is. So in this case, most of our content is HTML, right? Makes sense. There's some stuff about security, like our using proper security. Looks like we're pretty good. Missing a few things. You can see your response codes. So mostly success, but we're also getting some redirects. Admin, not surprising. Getting a redirect from that external URL as well. You can see a lot of success messages, a few no responses, no surprise from admin. Coming down here, it tells us about a URL. You know, ideally there wouldn't be uppercase in our URL. That could just be admin parameters. We want to try to exclude parameters when we can. We'll kind of talk about that again. Rob touched on that yesterday. It's very important to consolidate your search ranking factors into as few pages as possible. So avoiding parameters is great. It can't always be done. At least maybe you can do something to tell Google that those parameters don't indicate separate pages. Down here, we see page titles, another great section to check out. These should not be over 60 characters generally, or over 561 pixels, which is just estimated. As you can see, that matches up pretty well with over 60 characters. And the reason why these shouldn't be longer is because Google will just truncate them. You want to make sure to use a tool like a pixel width checker to test your ones that are a little longer and make sure that they're good. I mean, your title is your strongest ranking factor in a lot of ways. And it also allows the user to know what they're going to click to. So it affects the modification engine. It's very similar to the meta description. And on the meta description, we did okay on the page to the meta description. We see not doing too good. I mean, we're missing 209 out of 277 of these. And you might say, as is true, well, the meta description doesn't directly affect our indexing ranking, like our SERP result. And that's true, but it does indirectly affect it in a pretty significant way through that modification engine. If you have a really good meta description, it's going to promote a click, a higher click-through rate. If you have a higher click-through rate, your rankings will literally change. I know we've talked about some of this in the past, but here you can see through an audit exactly what's going on. So those missing ones, boom, we can see what they are, and we can take care of it. Okay. H1, missing on a lot of pages. Okay, mostly admin, but look at this. It's missing on the products page too. Want to maybe improve that. I mean, a lot of these are trivial. I'm hoping that at this point, you're all going through your own site. Either you just finished the Ahrefs, now you got this downloading, you're just opening it up, or you're kind of along with me. Because what matters here isn't what this demo site that I threw together for the call is showing up. What matters is really what you're seeing. Continuing on, we're missing H2s. We have a lot of low content pages. By the way, this is a problem for most e-commerce stores and something that's super important to SEO. Write longer descriptions on your product pages. Most of the low content is the product pages. That's really tough. I mean, Google is basically taking that text and using it to rank your page. And if you just got an image and a little 200-word text box, you're missing a low-hanging fruit. Hire a copywriter, find someone that you can trust, put them on your staff, have them write your descriptions. What else? There's some images with missing alt text, which is a ranking factor, a more minor one, but still a factor that matters. It's significant, and it's very significant for the accessibility. And we're going to be talking about accessibility audit later, but that's something to keep in mind, right? And then also, like the same thing is really, we don't want images over 100 kilobytes. Can any of us really make websites that have all images lower than that factor? That's hard. Admittedly, that's hard, but it's something we want to strive for. And you might find if we click on these, that a few of these, if we sort by size, this would sort by size. There we go. Oh, it's lagging a little bit, it looks like. Size the other way. Okay. We might find at the top, you got like one image that's 1 megabyte. Now, some of the stuff we can see in our other tools that we're looking through our other audits. Some of these audits overlap, but it's something you can do in Screaming Frog. We can also check our canonical URLs, make sure we're setting them. Remember that that's not something that Google has to follow, but it's a very strong indicator to Google of what you think the canonical should be. Google definitely pays attention. And finally, at the bottom, I mean, there's a few more things. We have pagination here. Luckily, Solidus already provides good pagination through both Solidus front end, which is, in Solidus 2.10 now, like on core, or even the newer one, Solidus starter front end. The pagination is good, but we just need to be careful because a lot of people replace their front end, right? And you don't want your paginated pages to count as separate pages to Google. So in your link attributes, it's very important to use those rel next and rel prev, or rel all, I think is the third option, to show the correct page to Google. Set the correct canonical page in your header, in your head, and also set the correct link attribute so they know what's going on. As a side note, make sure you set your link attributes correctly for other things like do not follow, or a sponsored link, or user-generated content. But in terms of pagination, it's especially important because that's controlling how well your product index page ranks. So there's some directives, Ajax, structured data we'll cover later, sitemaps, we already covered basically, page speed we're going to cover later. So I think that's about it for just the quick run through on the right. As you can see, we can also run through these tabs, which you can move through with your arrow keys as well, because there's a lot of them, and sometimes it's a little tough to find them. But like, if you wanted to check out your page titles, or you wanted to check out your meta description, you can go here, you can sort it, search it. It's just a lot of good stuff. And then on an individual one, you can find more information. So like, let's say we sorted by status code and we see a status code of 300. Doesn't seem to want to search very well right now during this call. But if you saw a 300 or 301, we'd want to click on that. Is that supposed to be a permanently moved, or like a temporary move 3 or 3? Maybe, maybe not. So it's just a great way to spot errors all around your site. Okay, that is Screaming Frog SEO Spider. Let's move on back. Oh, one. Here we go. Okay, so we're done with the SEO spider crawls, or hopefully you're done. Next up is on-page technical SEO audits. So specifically page speed insights, Google Think Test My Site, webpage speed test, webpagetest.org, which I absolutely love, and structured data rich results. So let's just dive in. So I'm going to post this URL right here for everybody. This is the URL for the page speed insights. So head on over there. I'll check out this great tool that's going to test how fast our page is. So let's test, instead of that demo site, I don't want to air any dirty laundry, but with the hopes that it'll encourage us to improve, I'm going to use Solidus IO here. The analyzing step is pretty quick. Good time to have that sip of water. I got the right mug this time. Uh-oh. I may have looked at this beforehand. I knew it was going to be low. What's happening? Why are we getting the 25? Well, page speed insight's going to tell us below. Looks like the number one thing is this time interactive is just huge. Down here, it breaks it down into individual components. So like preloading key requests would be a great thing that we can do. And look at this, bunch of fonts. So if we could preload these fonts somehow, or use a different font that was available to load to begin with and then replace it with the right font later, that could save us almost 2 seconds. Now I'll say, in my experience using this tool, this is not an actual 1.83 seconds. It's kind of like a magnitude of how helpful one of these things will be as opposed to another one. So take it in kind. Besides preloading key requests, what else could we do? Well, we could properly size images. Now, page speed insights is pretty particular. I mean, look at this. They're reducing the size of an image from 70 kilobytes and saying we can go down to 50. Well, I guess it's different. So it's down to 17 kilobytes. That's a savings of 53. That's not nothing, but it's pretty small. So you got to decide how detailed you want to go with this. But I will say we've seen our results from our data go up dramatically from addressing even small things like this. Of course, eliminating render blocking resources is important. And we talked about this in past years. We talked about optimizing that critical load path, right? That time to first paint. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the webpagetest.org 2 audits from now. So remove unused JavaScript. Looks like there's a few things that Google doesn't think we're using. Doesn't think we're using some of that CSS. Looks like a third-party code is having quite an effect on us. Hotjar is the worst culprit. Now, I love Hotjar as much as the next developer for the heat maps and the screen recordings, but maybe we shouldn't load it, or maybe there's a way we can find to load it late on in the process, so we're just absolutely sure it's not blocking our render. Maybe that's already true on this site. I'm not sure. Does not use passive listeners to improve scrolling performance. Okay, minimize main thread work. I don't know how much of these we can really do. Obviously, the setup that we have on Netlify is critical to having quick deploys, and I think it's a pretty wonderful setup with middlemen. I've worked and contributed back to this site on the blog, but yeah, this is suggesting to us a whole bunch of different improvements. It's a great audit. And this is the audit for mobile, but we actually can click desktop and we can see if there's anything different on this side too. I won't spend a long time here. A lot of this stuff's the same, but sometimes it's different. Like for example, as you can see at desktop, we get a lot better score. On desktop, we're scoring a 77 versus on mobile, we're scoring a 25. So obviously mobile is what we need to concentrate on more, but it's also a little bit of a higher standard rate because it takes longer to load the same size asset with a slower connection that you're likely to have on mobile. Okay, so that's page speed insights. Next up is Google Think, test my site. If you haven't checked out this site, Think with Google, I highly suggest it. It's really nice. This feature, Test My Site, is a little bit more mobile oriented. I will post that into the chat again here. So again, we're just going to, couldn't be more simple. We're just going to add in our domain. So solidusrock.com. Give Solidus IO a break. By the way, if any of you are brave enough and want me to use a particular site for the next audit, I'm again making the offer. Just post it there in the chat, and I'll use it for one of the next ones. Okay, so with this one, you can get actually a more full report by clicking through, and like you can see there's a pop-up that comes up and your email, etc. We're not going to do that right now, but it's available if you're following along, and I would recommend it. So they're giving this rating a little more generous here, needs improvement. So they're saying that they think we're loading in about 2 seconds on a 4G connection. What I really like about this is it's going to give us improvements in a business context. It's not only technical. So here we see 0.1 seconds. Improving your load time by 0.1 seconds can boost conversion rates by 8%. Wow. What would that do for your revenue if your conversion rates went up by 8% right now? Those are all new sales for you, right? We covered this in some of the past talks. Amazon has said this. Walmart has said this. It's established. We know for sure. Even tiny improvements in speed make a big difference in whether your users actually purchase. And when we scroll down, we see then some specific recommendations. So here's loading your site instantly, like a progressive web app. I assume they're talking about minifying JavaScript, enabling text compression. So you're serving your static assets like your JavaScript and CSS compressed as gzips, serving images in next-gen formats. How many of you are doing this? It's becoming a lot more widely available now. There's better support than there has been in the past, and it's a big improvement in speed. As we talked about, eliminating render blocking resources, we got that tip before. And of course, you can get more recommendations by clicking Get Your Full Report. So we can explore some more speed tools. I tried this in advance and tried to type in spreecommerce.org. It didn't work for me, but maybe it will now during the demo. Nope. For whatever reason, it says it can't find the site. But there's other tools. This page speed tool is very similar to the other tool that we already reviewed. And then, what's great is it talks about not just boosting your speed, but like on this test my site, it goes beyond that. It's auditing how personal are you? Are you providing personalized recommendations or doing A/B testing? Are you accessible from anywhere, etc.? And make it seamless is their third tip. So that aircraft sign up, if any of you did it, it was super seamless. It was like you were on that landing page, you click the link to sign up, it pops up, you enter your information, including your credit card, but not even setting a password because that might be a barrier. You click go and you're already signed up. But there's another company, raise.dev, that one of my friends runs, which you all should check out if you have a minute. But they do a similar thing with their sign up. You can sign up without setting a password. It's a really smooth sign up flow if you can incorporate that into your app. Okay, so Get Your Full Report, that's that pop-up. And this was Think with Google feature, Test My Site. Okay, 2 of 4 done, on to 3 of 4 now. The next page speed test tool that I really love and is worth doing alongside the other tools is this one. It's Webpagetest.org. So let's do a web page test. Let's try, maybe we'll go with the Solidus page, but we'll go with like a different page. Oh, Solidus.io, thank you. Go with like a different page on the site. How about this blog page? Okay, so we're gonna test this blog page and see how it performs. What's nice about this, it's gonna run 3 tests, not just one. So it's gonna be able to get the average of the data. So it's a little bit more accurate. It's also gonna provide us with more detailed metrics than what Page Speed Insights or that Think with Google Test My Site is providing. A cascade flow, as you can see, it loads them right as they come up. So that's the first one. We don't have all the data yet. It's running test number 2 and 3. But you can see the cascade going through that process breakdown. And you can see what the time is to first paint, which is important. So here we go. We're getting our numbers. Looks good. Let's click into details instead of summary so we can just see like a little bit more information here. So it looks like this page did good in some, you can see kind of a summary at the top. It did good in some ways and not so good in others. For example, they're not giving us a good security score or image compression or caching static content, but we did good otherwise. I know Solidus IO is doing better across the board, just FYI. But if we look down, we can see the DOM was interactive at 1 second. This is really important because that's when the page becomes responsive. So even though we're getting a much longer load time, 5 seconds or so, the fact that our DOM is interactive at 1 second means that Google is going to perceive a higher page rank, a better score from our site, even though there's stuff happening further down the page. As we look down, we can see this cascade, some of the things that are running and taking the most time. Look at this Richard.jpg. That must be a larger image, I guess. I guess this cover image is also rather large. Those fonts we already identified are taking quite a long time to load. Maybe there's other things that we can glean from this too. I don't want to go too deep into it again, because I'm hoping you're following along with me and you're not even really focused on what I'm doing quite as much as you are seeing some of your own data, and if there's anything that's popping out at you as problematic. Hotjar is coming up here. I can see some of our third-party stuff going on. We can click through too, by the way, and we can see like content breakdown. Some of the stuff we got in our Screaming Frog SEO audit, a domain breakdown, where we're connecting, the number of requests that we're getting. Remember, we want to reduce our number of requests and our number of redirects. Here's a processing breakdown of what's happening. So this is a great tool to be able to take a pulse on where are you right now and to follow up. Like, of course, if the security audit is saying it's not good, website test really links to a lot of partners. I can't endorse all of the partners, but I can endorse Webpagetest as being great. But there's definitely more information that you can find here. Let's do another quick test while we're here, just so we can get a sense. How about we try our test site? Okay, so I'm gonna let that queue because we're moving along, but we still got a ways to go and we're coming up on an hour already. And we'll come back to this. This is at the front of the queue. One of the great things about audits, just like the Ahref things, you can come back. It looks like it's almost done. We'll still come back to it. Okay, next up and last on the technical audits is structured data and the new rich results audit. There's this tool called Test Rich Results. And this is really targeted now, as opposed to the structured data, which was all that good JSON LD data that was letting us insert products and breadcrumbs and organizations, all that extra data into Google. It lets us take that and go one step further to see if that data is enabled in the right way to provide rich results, which are those answer boxes at the top of the search results. They're often called the 0th search result. And that's kind of the holy grail. You're going to get the very most clicks. Obviously, sometimes someone's going to see the answer and not click. So you might think of it as a bit of a double-edged sword, but it's worth it. If you get the rich results, especially for your products in that product slider, it's huge. So the way that you can check and see if it's working is by going to this tool. But how is it really better than the old tool, which is still here, by the way? The structured data testing tool, I recommended this to you guys in the past. You're just going to enter in your URL and you'll be able to see what's happening here. We can just very quickly solidusrock.com, take a quick test, see what's happening. So it's going to give us the data, those warnings, and we actually saw those warnings in Search Console. It's also showing us the warning that tool is being shut down. The structured data testing tool is still around right now, but it will go away because they're replacing it. So let's not bother with that anymore. Let's go over the one that's the new one, recently out of beta. I played around with a little bit. It does seem a little bit just out of beta. Seemed like I was getting a little bit of a bug with some of the stuff, but we'll test it now. We're gonna test that same URL and see what kind of results we get back. So boom, right away you see how it's formatted. Not all markup is eligible for rich results. It's not formatted as much around structured data as it is the benefit you want from your structured data within the Google search platform. And what makes this better, is actually on this slide a little bit. So I'll just go back to that for a second. It's showing which search feature enhancements are valid for the markup you're giving them. It's gonna let you handle dynamically loaded structured data better. It'll render both mobile and desktop versions as a result. And it's fully aligned with Search Console. Previously, you could get like a little bit different data from the structured data testing tool, as opposed to what you saw in that product enhancement section of Search Console that we viewed earlier. that was over here again, just as a quick refresher. Previously, this was a little different than the structured data testing tool. Now this will show exactly the same results as on the Search Console, the rich results. So let's go there now and see a little bit more of what it has to say. A lot of the information is similar to what you got out of the structured data testing tool. For example, we have this one error, invalid value type for field name. We can see we're passing a URL as the field name. So this is something we can improve. It's probably pretty easy to improve. Would it improve if we install Solidus SEO? I'm not sure. I was hoping to include that in this demo and workshop, but didn't quite have time. So that'll be homework either for me or someone on this call if they'd like to try to install Solidus SEO and see if it fixes this error. If not, maybe we have a little bit more work we have to do and a new issue on our extension. But it's providing great information on whether we're going to get these rich results. It's definitely worth taking a look. Okay, so we made it through the on-page technical audits. And we're now into maybe what's my favorite, which is keyword and content audits. And I say maybe it's my favorite because it's the one that's, I think, most often overlooked. We as developers have no problem with understanding, hey, I got to make my site faster. These images are too big. But when we start to say, well, what keywords are you targeting on the site? Or what keywords are you targeting on this page? Or are you cannibalizing your own keywords and actually hurting yourself? Do you know anything about that? And they say, I don't know, I'm not sure. That's the SEO person's job. Well, I'm empowering you right now. It doesn't have to be an SEO person's job. You can do it yourself. The first thing is we're going to do a keyword and competitive analysis with SpyFu. Now, this one really should get a star similar to the Ahrefs. The reason I didn't give it a star is you are able to use the tool without paying for it, but you don't get all the data out of it, unfortunately. Also, as I was starting to say, there are manual audits that you can do of your keywords and your content that go well beyond just what happens here with this kind of competitive analysis-oriented keyword research that's done through SpyFu, but we'll save those for another time. We don't have enough time, unfortunately, on these calls. So let's just enter in here. Maybe we'll do Solidus IO again. And boom, right away, we see some data here. We can see what are our organic competitors, such as this site, which was new to me and I had never heard of before until I did this search in preparation for the call, rr-e.com. And you're like, okay, well, what is that? I was curious too, rr-e.com. And apparently it's whatever this is. Maybe somebody on the call knows what it is and we can talk about it in the Q&A session. Maybe it's something old before I was in the community even, who knows? We see spreecommerce.org coming up, that makes sense. Spark Tech Soft must be Spark Solution sites, or I'm not sure, but I'm just guessing. I don't recognize these other ones, but you can see your competitors. And importantly, you can see what keywords you're ranking for, what they're ranking for. You can see that they're ranking for and or targeting more keywords than we are. So SpreeCommerce, that circle's bigger. ROR-E is not targeting very many at all. We share 14 keywords between all three of us. So we might say like, well, what is SpreeCommerce targeting that we're not targeting? Should we maybe write some blog posts around that? Or again, you don't have to think about it in terms of Solidus IO. Think about it in terms of your own site. What is your own blog targeting versus your competitor's blog? What's listed on your product pages or about your product features that's not on your competitor's website, and what is that's not on yours? So we could click here on SpreeCommerce, and we'll see a few of their results that are exclusive to SpreeCommerce.org. So FCP Euro, thank you for your recent donation. We really appreciate you coming on as a regular donor to Solidus. But I guess they're in some way slightly targeting that, maybe just listing them as an example on their site. We can see other data down here that's hidden because, like I said, unfortunately, SpyFu gives you a little bit for free. The rest is paid. It's $99 per month. There is a 30-day money-back guarantee. So you can, I mean, don't quote me on that, double check, but I'm 95% sure. So if you want, sign up and try it and play around with it. Do all your research for 30 days and cancel before it's up. or keep it for a little while, or don't sign up for it at all and do all this stuff manually. But I think that this is a really valuable tool for seeing who your competitors are and seeing how you're performing in relation to them. So like, for example, this is really eye-opening, right? So this yellow line is spreecommerce.org, and Solidus Seo is this red line down here. So you can see, like, over this period, over last year, they were targeting like 462 keywords, and for whatever reason, that's fallen way down to 232. Did they launch a new website? Maybe. You know, did they trim out thin content? Did they get a manual action against them? I don't know, because we can't see that Search Console data, and I didn't do any more detailed competitive review. But something happened, clearly, and we could see over a longer period, or even a longer period. Like maybe we can kind of like see that trend that Alberto laid out in his talk of like, you know, here's like 2016, and then here's like 2018 to 2020, we're kind of on the up, and then here we're looking good. But look at that trajectory. It's definitely solidly up. Whereas Spree is not so much up and maybe slightly down or plateaued. So there are a lot of other ways that we can use this tool. And I encourage you to click around. Look, this is like something talking about backlinks. So for example, we have backlinks from this nrowegt.com, which I'm not familiar with, but oh, Fast Ruby, great. That's awesome. We love them. I loved, I'm blanking on his name right now, but I loved that talk last year. So yeah, this is really great. We just get a lot of different information from SpyFu. It's another way that we can audit our site. And I'm suggesting that you focus to use it on keywords, but there are other aspects to it. Okay, so SpyFu, check. While we're on the topic, and I think we have just a moment for it, it looks like based on the time, there are manual things that we can do, and I'll just touch on one of them. If we wanted to do a search, and we were thinking about targeting a specific keyword, I don't know, I'm thinking about Fast Ruby, so like Ruby upgrades. I know that they do a lot with Ruby upgrades, or Ruby on Rails upgrades. Maybe that's a better one. Could not more highly recommend those guys if you need help. Okay, so whoever's coming up at the top here, I wonder if Fast Ruby is ranking. They are. So you can see they're down. They're pretty close to the top. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the sixth result. But could they get this back up to like up here? Well, maybe you're not going to eclipse upgrading Ruby and Rails from Rails guides, but you know, perhaps they could pull it up like one more rank. And the way that this search traffic works is it's exponential as you get towards the top. Well, what would be their technique for doing that? Well, they probably want to analyze these other results and see if they can be more similar to them in some way, or if there's something that these results are doing that this one isn't. As a caveat here, it might be that Google just feels that if you search for Ruby on Rails upgrades, your search intent indicates that you're looking for like a guide as opposed to something that talks about why it's important to upgrade or a specific upgrade such as this 5.0 to 5.1. But the point is that you can click into these competitive articles, the ones that are ranking ahead of you. Maybe you're not ranking as well as Fast Ruby, you're like down here or something. So you can click on all top 10 results and see what they're doing. What kind of content do they provide? How do they provide it? How quickly do they provide it? How fast do their sites load? Look for what's different. That's basically what you can do as a manual keyword and content analysis. And it really can have a huge impact on your rankings. We talked about some of these tips in last year's talk, and I encourage you to check that out. There's one slide that has like a whole bunch of copywriting tips for organic SEO. And basically want to do that stuff, right? Creatively, get to your point quicker, write in a simpler language than you think you need to, include additional content, all that good stuff. Okay, so we've done our automated audit. We talked about a little bit our manual audit bonus. Let's talk a little bit about duplicate content. When's the last time you guys did a search to see what kind of, Ernesto, thank you, Peter. I don't know why I couldn't think of his name. Yeah, Ernesto, shout out to you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Okay, so Copyscape here. How many of you have used this or a tool like it to check for duplicate content on your website? Even perhaps on your personal blog. It doesn't have to be on your website for your employer, but it could be. I'm going to click on the Karma Creative blog for now. Quick plug for this article we came out with recently. Support Solidus talks about our Solidus initiative, spearheaded by Karma and, you know, bolstered by the whole community to support Solidus, plain and simple, with time, code, and money. It also goes through a more detailed history of some of the stuff that happened in the past, augmenting what some of Alberto said earlier today. I strongly encourage you to check it out and read it if you haven't. It's a long read, but it's worth it. So anyway, we're going to click on karmacreative.io/support Solidus, click go, and see if there's any duplicate content around the interweb. And we see, yeah, it looks like there is a little. What is this from? What are these things? Well, it looks like this duplicate content is spam, like hacky links where some kind of program scraped our content and then created this. I mean, there's a video game website. So, you know, sure, we could approach them and say, hey, take it down. But they're probably not going to respond. Whoever's running the site probably is in Russia or China or wherever and kind of like hacking. I mean, that's a black hat kind of technique. But let's check. I clicked away too fast. Let's check like a different site that has some more likelihood of duplicate content. And Gil, I will get you that presentation file as soon as we finish. So let's just check out Solidus IO, let's say. So here is where they found the most duplicate content from Solidus IO. So one of them is SourceForge. Now, is this bad that they have this content? Maybe yes, maybe no. I mean, it's bad in terms of the duplicate content. It's good in terms of the fact that like we're listed there and it's a backlink and we're getting clicks from it, hopefully at least, right? And we could actually investigate into that with Search Console as we saw before, or with Ahrefs or SpyFu. But here it is. That like this is the content. This is like 1 for 1 with whatever we have on Solidus IO in some place. So yeah, you might want to check your own blogs, check each page in your website, check whatever you think that you're being ripped off for. You can send a cease and desist to these people if they shouldn't be having your content, or sometimes you can just get an attribution. Maybe they're including an image from you alongside a little bit of your text, but with no link. And you can get a backlink out of just reaching out and saying, hey, we'd like a backlink. Can you give us one? A site like this looks like they're already giving us one, but if they're more like just taking your content, maybe they wouldn't. So it's worth asking for. Okay, that's between sites, but what about within a specific site? Well, that's this other tool called Siteliner. Let's check that out. And I'm just going to use, I don't know, the Karma Creative site for this. So we'll do karmacreative.io. We'll see what kind of duplicate content we have on our site. So we can check out a summary. We have a few pages being redirected, normal pages. Looks like very good, unique content, 97%. That's helped out a lot by the long articles we have. If there's one tip that's not really explicit in the audit, that I want to just say explicitly now, write longer content. Your articles, if possible, should be 9,000 words. That's my recommendation. I know that probably sounds crazy, 9,000 words. And your product display pages, the PDPs, at least 2,000 words. Or if you can't make it at either of those marks, at least 50% of that. Don't do those little $200, those little 200, they're not $200, 200 word. They're not worth anything. In fact, they can actually bring down your collective rankings by being considered a poor ranking indicator by Google. It's called thin content. You're oftentimes better not having that page at all rather than having the thin content. Of course, sometimes it's unavoidable, but please try to focus on longer articles, longer feature pages, longer product displays pages, all that stuff. One of the reasons it increases dwell time, which is another big factor in the modification engine alongside with the click-through rate in terms of moving you up in the search rankings from where you were from the raw indexing value. So you can see it's providing a lot of different things, common content, external links per page, lots of good stuff here. And we could audit what that duplicate content is and where the matches are. We can check for broken links. So like, let's do a quick search again, for Solidus IO, make sure to give it the HTTPS. And we see we actually are coming up with some broken links. Now, I don't know what is going on with these, because I actually, like, when I was preparing, I clicked on these and it looked like they worked. But just goes to show you, we want to be checking for that. You want to be checking for that on your own site, even if you think everything is going well, whether it's Search Console or this Siteliner, it's giving you a little flag of like, hey, look at me. You got to look at me. Something's going on. Okay. So finally, the last type of keyword and content audit that we're going to talk about is a manual EAT audit. Remember, EAT stands for expertise, authoritativeness, and trust. So what does that really mean? Well, it means that you have a lot of these things that I've listed here, which I'll go through in a second. There's currently no like good automated tool. I would love to see one. It's a little hard with the customization that happens on the front end, but we can go through our site and just ask ourselves these questions. These are all things, and there's many more of them. This is just a short list that convey to users of your site, possible customers of your site, that you're an expert, you have authority, and you should be trusted, that you are trusted. So do you have an FAQ page? By the way, FAQs, that's another great tip, because that targets long tail voice search keywords, along with providing authoritativeness and trust, and maybe some more expertise by being able to explain yourself or a complicated concept simply to your customer. So FAQ, have to have it. Everybody should make an FAQ if you don't have one. Figure out something else. You think it's not applicable to you? Just figure anything out for an FAQ. It can be 5 questions to start with. Put a return policy page. Most people have this. Make sure it's an explicit page, like a separate page. You can find it easily. It's in your header or your footer. It's right there. It's not hidden. Same with your contact info. I mean, definitely make a contact us page. Definitely, it's not listed here. Definitely make an about us page. I feel strongly, based on my research, those should be separate pages on your website, available in a prominent spot, just like a return policy page or an FAQ. And add your contact info, right? Like I was saying, physical address, phone number, and email. And you're like, oh, well, I'm an e-commerce company. I don't have a physical address. Well, get one. Get something that you can stand behind. Same thing with phone number. Suck it up and get a phone number. Use Twilio. It's $1 a month. Use automated voicemail. You don't even have to have someone answering the phone. But convey that trust to your customer by providing a phone number just in case they need to call. Similarly, like providing email address, not only a contact us form. Some customers prefer to email you. Make it easy for them. Make it easy for them to find your privacy policy page and your terms of service, which isn't listed here, but it's important too. And what about reviews and ratings? Do you have that social proof? Do you have testimonials from happy customers? There's almost nothing that can provide more trust to your customer about you than these types of indicators, reviews and ratings. It's crucial. Testimonials. You have a good customer that just sent you an email that they love your product. Hey, can I get a testimony for you? And make even a new page on your website that just has a couple of them. Fill it in with other content. Add it to your About Us page. This is really valuable for Google and your customers to see that you're trustworthy. And what about authoritativeness? Do you have any recommendations or certifications from authorities in your field? Do you have backlinks? I mean, I get to that in 2 points, but what about backlinks from other high EAT websites or other websites with high domain authority for that matter? If you're a doctor, do you have a link from a prominent medical association, or are you someone or something that Google considers to be more fringe? Right now, especially after the Your Money, Your Life update that happened 1.5, 2 years ago now, it's very important, like critically important, that you pay attention to this EAT stuff if you're in that space of, e-commerce, something about your health, something about advice on your money. This stuff becomes even more important. You need that good backlink. You need that recommendation. And you want to make sure to also check your business citations. Do you have social profiles set up? Do you have Yelp? Do you have TripAdvisor, Yellow Pages? Maybe not all of them are applicable to every business, but you should sign up for as many as you can quickly sign up for. Each one might take you, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But this is very important. If someone searches for your business, they're not only going to get one result with your business or even just 10 results and you're the top 10 with all different links from your website. They're going to get other links from around the web. And these other social profiles, these business citations, which can even just be your name and address and phone number in yellowpages.com, those are another authoritative, trust, expertise type rating so that your customers feel like they want to shop with you and convert. Okay. Gil, I will circle back around for you on schema tags, if not before, during Q&A. We'll see how long it takes to get through the rest of this. Okay, so bonus. Let's do an accessibility audit with X. Jen Luker last year at the conference introduced this tool to us, but it is a great tool. And I don't know how many of us have used it since the conference. It's really important that we put a focus on accessibility, not just because lawsuits in America from the ADA are much more commonplace than they used to be, but because much more importantly, there are users that are impaired in some way that need our help to use our website. And by the way, if you need extra motivation, those are users that will purchase things, that will transact and convert. So you're missing out on revenue if you don't address accessibility. And besides that, it's the right thing to do. It's the thing to do to work with karma. So I actually pulled this up here in the screenshot for Solidus IO. Let's take a look at Solidus IO and see what we can find there. So if you haven't done so yet, I'm going to just post this link here. I believe I missed the SPY Foo link. I'll post that quickly too, I guess. If you need any links or any of this stuff, let me know later. So if you visit that link for decay.com/X, you'll be redirected to a page that will allow you to download the Chrome extension. I'll just visit that together with you for a second. So here it is. Click Install Free Chrome extension, and you're going to immediately get this extension in your browser. Well, you're going to have to first click on this next page. I already have it installed, but click here, install it, say yes. It'll pop up. As you may know, in the new Chrome, you have to click this thing, click on the pin to pin it if you want. Otherwise, it defaults to hidden. I'll give you guys just a second to get that installed. Okay, so hopefully you've managed to get that installed now. And we're going to head over to Solidus IO, or to your own website in your case, and open up the web inspector. By the way, we see we're getting some errors here. Not sure what that's about. Not important now. We'll click over to Axe. We're going to click Analyze. Great. So these are the errors or the warnings that are coming up for the homepage for Solidus IO. And by the way, we can do this for not just Solidus IO itself, but any of the other pages that we have on the website. So let's just look down and see a few of these that are pretty easy to fix. Okay, looks like one of them is this link at the top. That's for the digital conference. You might think, just from looking at it, that white really stands out great on that blue, and it's exactly in alignment with our designs and the Solidus branding and all of that. But it looks like that actually doesn't have quite enough contrast in the color there. Maybe there's something that we can do to improve that. Or maybe we can at least make the text bigger. Maybe that'll help with the color contrast a little bit, because maybe the color contrast is worse and we have to keep it because of the branding, but we can make it more readable through another way to fix it. Here we see the images need alt text. There's an image missing one, it looks like. This MeUndies logo. So how long does that take, by the way, to fix? Maybe including everything else that you need to do along with the change and all of the QA and everything. 15 minutes? 20 minutes? It's probably a lot less, right? We were talking about a one-line change. Maybe it's a little more tricky than that. You gotta get the app running. But then once it's running and you're ready to do the commits, you knock out a bunch of these all at once. So let's take a look. Links must have discernible text. So these links don't have any discernible text, it looks like. We should add some text, even if it's in some way hidden. As long as the screen readers can get to it, that's what's most important. This heading level increases by more than 1, which is more confusing for someone using a screen reader. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these. Ensures landmarks are unique. We must have 2 site headers or 2 header elements. I'm just trying to give you some notes off the top of my head, but this is what we need to do as a community on Open Source Fridays together, because we're spending more time on the platform. And for this matter, what about the admin of Solidus? If I go over to solidusrock.com/admin, thank you for not blowing up the app, whoever has not, and I click analyze here, you're going to see there's a bunch of stuff, kind of similar errors actually here, that are showing up. So we can see, for example, this Tor, it doesn't have enough contrast, right? So it's not only like on Solidus IO for our branding, it's so that admins and CSRs can use our platform. This makes a difference when you're choosing which platform as a company. Okay, so that is the Axe Accessibility Audit. Now, on to Solidus SEO. I had hoped, as I said earlier, that we'd have a demo here. It didn't quite work out, I'll just say it that way. But the extension is working out, and it's recently updated, and it's passing, and it'll help you with a bunch of stuff. And if you haven't tried it, I strongly suggest it. It gives you default image optimization, so that your images, if you pass in a really large image, it doesn't just add that as the taxon image and make it really huge. It improves metadata defaults and adds this to SEO interface that allows you, even in your JavaScript front-end framework, to call to SEO. I mean, define that on your model, call to SEO, and you're going to get that metadata. It adds JSON LD structured data for products, product listing page, breadcrumbs, and store. And that's one of the things you're asking about, Gil, the schema tags for products. So you get that as part of Solidus SEO. Solidus by default does include microdata, which is another structured data format as opposed to the JSON LD. But the JSON LD, I think, is a little bit more compatible. It's a little bit better if you're using a JavaScript front end. And it's just a little bit more flexible in that you can insert it in any place in the web page that you want. That's one of the reasons we chose it. So we replace that stuff with JSON LD using our extension. There might be some tweaks that you need to make there, but it provides the general structured data in JSON LD for all those types that just mentioned. And we just added in the new thing in version 1.0.7, which I'll ask you to be sure that you're using if you're recently adding it to your project and bundle installing, because just full disclosure, as I was doing so, it seemed like I was bundling with the 1.0.2 version. It's the old one. So just if you're going to use it, make sure you're on the new one, or point to master on GitHub instead with a quick GitHub specifying this URL and .git and then branch master. And what you'll get is conversion tracking and just normal view tracking with Facebook, if you add the tag, the environmental variable, Pinterest, Google Analytics, and Google Tag Manager. Although we ask you not to use Google Analytics and Tag Manager together, just pick one or the other. But yeah, all of that conversion tracking is now baked in, it's built in, so it's doing even more for you. We considered pulling that into a separate gem. Maybe we will at some point. For now, it seemed like those analytics, paired along with Solidus SEO enough to put them there. Also, it does nothing if you don't set those environmental variables, so you don't need to worry about it too much. And that is Solidus SEO. So I hope you take a look. I think you'll really like it. And finally, this is my last slide, concluding the talk. Support Solidus. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think it's more important than any of the SEO stuff that I talked about in my talk for our community. We've come a long way since the last talk, since the last conference a year ago. I mean, new core members, new maintainer, I mentioned a bunch, but we still need everybody to do even more now. For example, if you're an agency that's donating at a lower level, I sincerely and humbly ask that you consider donating at a little bit higher level. Maybe you can make it up to the silver tier at $325 a month. That'd be a huge increase over $100 a month. And it might not be that big of an increase in comparison to your yearly budget, but it would make a big difference to us here at Solidus. Even better would be $750 a month as an ambassador or gold partner, I'm calling them now. And if you can't do that, if you can't donate money, then how about code? Join Open Source Friday. Contribute back, do these accessibility changes I was just mentioning, or talk with our core members about which issues are best for you to take. They're very responsive, and if you make a message in GitHub, they'll get back to you. We also have some issues tagged that are good for first issues, and I've seen more organization since Jared has joined the team. And finally, with community, we can also give back. We've been doing a Solidus user group meetup once a month. It's not this month because of the conference, but we'll have another one next month. Join in. But not just that, make your own event. Use this Hacktoberfest event kit to do it. It's a great event kit. And maybe in addition to this, we all can think about participating in Hacktoberfest this year. As long as we were able to make like a few open hours available to the community, I think that through my network and the other agencies and retailers here, we could really create a buzz around, hey, let's get some kind of that Hacktoberfest excitement behind one of the best or the best open source Ruby on Rails e-commerce platforms that there is, which is Solidus. So with all due consideration, I thank you so much for bearing with me for this long talk. Thank you so much for your investment in Solidus and in what we're doing together. And I can't wait until next year when you all can try some of my hot sauce and maybe we can play some guitar together and maybe even have a retreat somewhere in the mountains. Who knows? We talked about it last time. Definitely another hike. So what else can I say? Please come work with us. We love new clients. We're also hiring. Reach out to us if you're looking for a new job, or just get in touch with me to say hi at Thomas at Karma Creative IO. Thank you so much.